Yep.
Call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Trustee Healy. Here. Trustee Katsinas.
Here.
Trustee Milani.
Here.
Trustee Compass.
Here.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye. Here.
Trustee Radishevsky.
Here.
Mayor Pico.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the August 27, 2023 Committee of the Whole minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Katsinas.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of August 7th, 2023.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Radishevsky.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Milani.
I abstain. I was not here.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
A resolution approving a policy regarding liens.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Healy.
I move to recommend to the village board to pass a resolution entitled, "A Resolution Approving a Policy Regarding Liens."
Second. Are there any questions or comments? And George, just give a brief summary.
So the next items, this resolution, administrative booking fees, AR write-offs, and the priority of utility bill payments are all part of an effort to change the way we do accounts receivable, just to clean it up a little bit. And this came out of our finance department's monthly meetings with Trustee Healy. We can go through each one of them. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. He can just kind of talk briefly about each one of these. But after we're done today, we're going to ask for any other comments. Trustee Healy provided some comments. We're going to then take those, incorporate those into a new draft that we will circulate, and then we'll bring it to a future Board of Trustees meeting. So Kevin, if you can just go through these in just a brief synopsis.
You can go through all 5 of them quickly.
Sure. The first item is a general policy, or is a village board policy regarding liens. This identifies the parameters in which we will file liens, whether that's, the debt is over $1,000 in the shorter period of time, or the debt is less than 10 years of age, where we could actually go and collect that particular property. So it kind of outlines those parameters. It's a brief policy, but it gives us our marching orders and direction when we will file liens on properties and debts to the village, that owe debts to the village. The second item is the police administrative booking fee. This is a fee that is charged to arrestees once they are processed. This is a relatively new fee. It's been around for just a few years, and we've seen not as good of collections as we had anticipated. And in fact, the amount of revenue that's collected is dropping precipitously over the last couple of years, and it is quite it's a small fee. It's $50, so the amount of revenue that's generated doesn't necessarily match up to the amount of effort that it takes to collect, and the disparity. Not everybody pays that. We can't require folks to pay that when they leave. So that becomes a challenge in collecting those fees. The next 2 items relate to writing off accounts receivable, and both of these items are not stopping our collection efforts on any of these receivables that you see before you, but we are, continuing on the village's collection efforts. The first one I'll talk about relates to our MWRD properties. Those are the where we bill for MWRD service. So those are properties in Will County, that is not taxed by the MWRD, but they are provided sanitary sewer service. And the village, we bill those properties, and the MWRD is paid directly by us. So we collect money from those property owners, and in these instances, there was nothing filed directly against on the property title, so they wouldn't show up in a title search. And so a number of times where folks were billed this, they are no longer in business, and so we don't have any lien authority to collect these particular debts. We have sent many of these to collections where we can. Sometimes the businesses are no longer in business, so we do try to collect them, but our options are actually limited in actually securing or requiring payment, enforcing payment for those MWRD properties. The other relates to what I'll call general accounts receivable. This is for all other accounts receivable of the village, and there are a number of different categories. Anything that the village bills, but the biggest in terms of quantity and dollar amount relate to those police administrative booking fees. There are a number of those that are outstanding that we have a difficult time going after them and actually being successful in collecting them. Those are sent over to our collection agency as soon as our billing term runs out. Then when they're at the collection agency, then they get turned over to the state of Illinois' iDrop program, and that's where we actually see the most success with the program with administrative booking fees, is the redirection of an individual's either property tax refund, or if they win lottery or they get a distribution from the state in some way, shape, or form, then a portion of that gets redirected over to us. There are other categories that are listed here, but like I said, the largest one relates to administrative booking fees as far as number and dollar amount. And the final item is a priority of utility bill payments. So on occasion, there are folks that don't pay their entire utility bill every 2 months. And so this gives us a little bit more direction on how we actually apply that bill. Sometimes there's questions on how we apply that, and then the different enforcement mechanisms that go along with that. So this provides us another tool in the toolbox in order to assist with collections. That's an overview of each of those items. We'll be happy to answer questions on any one in particular.
So if I can summarize, it basically, we just don't have any policies in place, and so we need a policy regarding liens, and obviously we want to lien properties and lien things that we can that are sizable enough to do so, because we may not collect today, but we'll collect at some point. They go to sell their house, whatever. The police booking fee, as we determined, it was $50, and to Kevin's point about it being the largest number, it's about a total of $190,000 that we haven't collected, trying to chase $50 at a time. That's not a good use. In fact, we're going to eliminate the police booking fee because it's just not something we get very many people to pay or collect. We have no real means for getting that. And the only other one that was over 10 grand is property damage, and that was for people who are uninsured and not a resident. So we don't have a lot of options there, and those have been outstanding for a long time. As noted, it's not going to change the fact that we're going to continue to try and collect these. It's just not going to show up in our books anymore, as it probably shouldn't, because they've been on there for such a long time. So whether it's the property damage or the MWRD related issues, all of the above, we just don't have a good enforcement mechanism. And that's what the utility bill changes are. It applies things to fees and sewer and water first, or sewer first and water last. We have more enforcement tools available with water, obviously, to get people to pay their bills. So that's basically what these next 4 items is after this one are all about.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize a distinction that to write off, the term write-off in accounting, we're going to take a financial hit for, in essence, of these items. We're going to have a bad debt expense. We've already recognized the revenue, so we're going to take a hit to the financial statements. That's what we mean by writing them off. But legally, they still owe the money. They haven't filed bankruptcy. It hasn't gone through a legal process. Legally, they would still owe the money. It's just in our financial records, we don't want to overstate what's coming in or what the village can realize either in today's, based on what you see today for down the road. And today, we don't, especially for a lot of those $50 fees, we don't see anything coming in. So we just need I think, someplace to, we need to write them off financially. Another concept that I wonder about is that when it comes to the accounts payable, we go through them, and as a board, we approve sometimes $5 and less disbursement in the payables. But when we write these off, I mean, in theory, that we're not going to chase we're not going to chase. It's actually a cost to the village. I just wonder the process of approving the cost, if it's the bookkeeper can say, well, we're never going to collect this, I'm going to write it off. But does he or she know all the facts and circumstances regarding someone? There's been some things in the development thing that people weren't aware of that, we're chasing people, and they're, we're well aware that they owe the money, and I don't want those, certain ones written off. So there's a lot of give and take in here too. And the other thing that gets me about these write-offs is that I think we should pay special attention to people from Orland Park. When our neighbors don't pay their debts to the village, that's one thing. When it's somebody from some faraway city, I don't care. But for some reason, the neighbors irritate me when they don't pay their bills. Those are just a couple ideas.
And just if I can add to what Trustee Healy said, this is exactly that. It's when there are debts to be paid, they have to get paid one way or another. And when folks are not making their payments, it's everybody else in the community that has to then make that up. So putting this into place is really a fairness thing for all residents, just to make sure that we do have the mechanisms in place to enhance our collection.
Right, and can I speak again? That MWRD situation, I'm just amazed that, I wonder how many lawyers know at a closing whether they're, I don't know, Dennis, if people who make the closings in that neighborhood, are they aware that there's this special 2 years of out there for any closing on those properties? I don't know if it has the same effect as a real estate tax that it's out there, but it just makes me wonder if on the closings, if they're identifying this liability to the village.
Only if it's recorded against that property.
That's why we have the lien process.
Correct.
The lien
Policy.
policy going into place is so that these things are lien, because then they will have to address it be a closing and pay off that debt.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Reardon.
switch gears a little bit, and maybe Chief Ross might know too, but I've been in court enough times to see when someone either, pleads guilty or they resolve a criminal case, there's all kinds of fees and fines and, things that, cost that the person might pay. First of all, do we get some of that? Do we follow up with that when we're doing our investigations and they either plead guilty or they're found guilty? And is there a way to offset some of the revenue by either increasing that number where we say this is our cost, and kind of reshape the booking fee into okay, now the person's guilty or they're taking a plea deal and get some of that money? I just don't know enough about it, so.
So those are fees that are assessed by Cook County, so I wouldn't imagine that they would increase the fees to give us more money. I mean, we
I'm
do
gonna
get
throw
some
like an
fee-
Orland Park thing in there for $50? No, I don't think so either.
And that's a very good point, because those during the court process are state mandated fees, right? And that's where the MV process really works better for the municipality, where we can take them to MV, is because we get all of that, right? But our booking fee ordinance is only a local ordinance. It wouldn't apply to Cook County.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Elimination of police administrative booking fee ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Reardon.
I move to recommend to the village board to adopt the ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Title 8, Chapter 2 of the Orland Park Village Code regarding administrative booking fees.
Second.
Call roll.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Accounts receivable write-off debt relating to MWRD Extraterritorial Agreement Ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Reardon.
move to recommend to the village board to adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the write-off of debts relating to the Municipal Water Reclamation District Extraterritorial Agreement.
Second.
Call roll.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Accounts receivable write-off debt relating to general accounts receivables ordinance.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Katsinas.
I move to recommend to the village board to adopt an ordinance entitled Ordinance Authorizing the Write-Off of Debts Relating to General Accounts Receivables.
Second.
Call roll.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Priority of utility bill payments ordinance.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
I move to recommend to the village board to adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Title 4, Chapter 3 of the Orland Park Village Code in regard to water sewer rendition of bills and priority of payments. Second.
Call roll.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Highland Avenue and Caro Vista Stormwater Improvements, RFP 23-048.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Radiszewski.
I move to recommend to the village board to award RFP 23-048 Highland Avenue and Carol Vista Stormwater Improvements Design Build to Christopher Burke Engineering of Rosemont, Illinois, an amount not to exceed $1,233,544.
Second.
Any comments? So Joel, so I have a question because these came in over, it looks like they came in over budget. So Highland Avenue came in over budget, and did we have money budgeted for Caro Vista? Yes, it looks like we did.
Yes, we did.
But they both came in a little higher.
Cara Vista came in lower than our government estimate. Highland came in a little higher.
Okay, because it's showing here that Caro Vista came in at 280, that was for construction costs, so the total
Correct.
350 is construction and engineering?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And I noticed we're covering it from the Catalina stormwater. Are we still going to be able to get the Catalina stuff done?
Yes, this year we just did the water with the water lining. Next year and the following year are additional storm improvements in our
So
capital plan.
savings that we're not expecting?
Some of
to
it
be?
will be savings in the water account for next year.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? The only other thing I saw in here is I said, it showed here that an 8-inch pipe, which it couldn't be dug any deeper than an 8-inch pipe, but now we're going to a 15-inch pipe. So I'm assuming something is allowing it to be dug deeper now?
Correct. Yeah, we're going to install the pipe a little deeper and have it slope to a different location, which is under the railroad, which is causing a little more of the cost to get underneath the railroad.
Okay, great. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Doogan Park redevelopment concept.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
I move to recommend to the village board to approve adopting the Doogan Park conceptual plan as presented, incorporating recommended changes, additions by the village board.
Second.
Ray, can you kind of go over this plan, please?
We have Patty White from, or Patty King, sorry, from White and Company here to do a brief presentation for us. So we have a slide presentation, if we can get that loaded, please.
Good evening.
I'm Patty King with White and Company. I have a very brief presentation for you today.
Okay.
been working on a concept plan for Doogan Park. We have successfully had some lovely community meetings. The neighbors were very passionate about this park, so it was actually a lot of fun working with them and their ideas. Let's go over, if we can flip, thank you. So the plan, as we've come up with, that we think, based on the applause we got at the second community meeting, I think meets the goals of the community. So we are looking to working from the north side of the park down. We are going to increase the parking lot. We are leaving the 2 tennis courts in place. We are going to restripe the half basketball and the 1 pickleball court just to the west side of the existing tennis to be 2 pickleball courts. And then we're going to add a total of 8 pickleball courts to this area. There is also a large 30 by 40 foot shelter, which will also have 2 restrooms in it as well, to allow for all the pickleballers to stand in the shade while they wait for their turn to play. As a result of the community meeting, we did add 1 additional bocce court, so there will be a total of 2 in the plan. We have a full-size soccer field, basically in its current location. The existing baseball field baseline will be reduced to 60 feet, which is what the Recreation Department actually runs there. And that allows the soccer field to not have any infield mix, so there's no overlap on those fields. Continuing to move down the west side of the plan, we are intending on adding a little more soil, so any of the extra soil that we have is going to create a sled hill on the very bottom of the plan itself. Expanding that south parking lot as well, so we'll resurface some and expand the rest, so that will serve baseball, the large picnic shelter that exists on the south end of the park, and will also serve rounding back up into the middle. We have a core area of a new playground, a smaller shelter, and then the half basketball court was something that the community also wanted to keep intact. Any questions on the overall plan? We're not making currently any changes to the disc golf, so this is about half of the acreage, maybe 2/3 of it. So I just left that off so you guys could see it.
I do have some comments overall. So one is great to see the community input to change it, and just so, you know, the people, most of the people here are aware, but we used to have, we had a rec advisory board when I arrived here, and all they did was get input. I think Ray would tell you this. All they did is want to get updated on what was happening in the village. They really didn't provide input. So we changed the structure, and so that they actually provide input to the board and recommendations to the board and hold these public meetings for all of the parks that we improve. We also go out to the public so that they know about the meetings as much as we possibly can, especially the local neighborhoods. They all get their postcards. These are process improvements that were put in place since 2019, since the new board members came on, and kind of allowed these process changes to happen so we could get more community input. And obviously, we added a shelter, we added parking, you know, we did some other things to the site as well based on those inputs. So, so I think that's great. One question I have for Ray, I know, so I just want to make sure things have changed. I know this diamond was used relatively frequently for older kids previously, but I think we have other big fields now, so I'm assuming that it's not used for that anymore?
Yeah, it has limited use for the older kids, so we think that'll be better used to have a large soccer field versus a large baseball field there.
Okay, large baseball field, you mean? Yeah, and the soccer, you know, I know we get requests for more soccer, so obviously to be able to do fields there, you know, I mean, that's where the Pioneers, believe it or not, I mean, in spite of what you may have heard, it's not, the Pioneers didn't always play at John Humphrey. This is actually where they played for almost 20 years. So, you know, I like the site overall. I see a few pickleballers in the crowd that may have comments to make, so I'm going to go through a presentation first, and then if you have any comments to make, nobody signed in, but I'll give you an opportunity to make them. Ray, if you want to put that up, put the presentation up.
All right, so what this shows, although obviously not very clearly, sorry about that, is how we're planning on phasing the project itself. So the items in blue, and I will go over these for you. So blue items are items, back up just a second. We're intending to submit for an OSLAD grant application. The maximum award for that is $600,000. So the Phase 1 OSLAD budget is $600,000. The village budget currently, as it stands, is $1 million. So we're targeting a $1.6 million project. So the blue and the yellow items, and I will go through those items with you, are what we're going to include in the grant application, and that's what I would consider the first phase of construction. The items that are going to be in blue, hey, thanks, Ray, the north parking lot and the pickleball courts. So that's what we're including in the village funding. We've identified these different buckets of money just to keep everything moving in the right direction and clear. For the OSLAD items, we're going to include the shelter with restrooms, the south parking lot expansion, the sled hill work, the soccer field, and the bocce courts. So those items will be included in our first phase. Our second phase, which would be the red items, include the playground, the shelter there, the half basketball court, any trail work that needs to be redone, the very north parking lot expansion, so kind of the north half there, site furniture, benches, trash receptacles, things like that, and any additional plant material that we're planning on doing as part of the project. The last item, and I think at this point we could flip to the next page if we want to look at numbers. The last item, as we were chatting with the community and with the Rec Advisory Board, there is a desire for lighting and windscreens on the pickleball courts at the fencing. These items are currently not budgeted. We're estimating them at about $340,000. So if you think you want lights, that's about what it's going to cost to do that.
In my understanding, Ray, we're gonna stub everything for the lights so we can run.
This actually, we would have to spend the extra money to stub them in. So the project right now without the lights is the blue items.
Right, that's without lights, but we can stub in all the conduit and all that kind of stuff. That shouldn't be too
We would have to
expensive to
figure that
add
into
to make
the
sure we're
project.
ready to go.
We could do that. We do not currently have that included in the Phase 1 costs.
Well, we should look at including that in the Phase 1 cost, because to dig it up and trench later does not make a whole hell of a lot of sense. So it's probably something we're going to end up doing, so we should at least have it ready to go. Let's not be redigging things up, and that makes it relatively simple to do in the
Understood.
future.
We'll plan for that. And I think you had one other slide presentation besides.
I do,
Patty's
and then, but
presentation.
before we do that, since we got the money stuff up here, so just to summarize, so we budgeted $1 million that we already have approved. That's going to take care of the pickleball courts and north parking lot. And we talked about the grant, which we're now qualified for. So for what people don't know is that, 2014? Is that when that,
Stellwagen?
the deal with Stellwagen was done? 2014, 2015? So about 2014, we did something with Stellwagen, and the previous administration and board committed to doing several $1 million of improvements to Dr. Marsh. They never did them. And so we've been ineligible for these grants because of that, because they never finished off the work that they did. We negotiated to actually get this done for less money, a lot less money than what we committed to. We've done the Dr. Marsh improvements. They're satisfied, IDNR is satisfied, so now we're eligible for these grants again, and we feel pretty confident we'll get them because of the type of project that we're doing here. So, and that allows most of the rest of the park to get done. And then the other future stuff, the playground shelter, half basketball courts, these are things we do every year at other parks. And so we will just fold that into what we do annually so that we can upgrade all of these. So does that pretty much summarize it?
That's it, yep.
Okay, great.
Good
Awesome.
job.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if you can flip to this other presentation.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy?
I'd like to, I have a question or two on this plan or whatever.
Sure.
What was, those pickleball courts, are they, do you get a pickleball, I think by reserving one, or is it just first come, first serve?
Generally, it's first come, first serve. My understanding is there's a whole elaborate paddle system that they use.
This will be a policy decision dealt with by Ray in the future. Once they're built.
Thanks. See,
I have two things. There's one with maybe a pickleball tournament for the city, because I realized over the weekend that as a senior citizen, those of us over 50 years old, that we've lost something a little bit in the library, but we're gaining back pickleball courts and bocce courts.
As you know, that's not a library anymore. It hasn't been for some time.
Okay.
I think you're aware of that based on your own home.
Voting history.
The History Museum, that's right.
So, the supposed History Museum was the old Village Boardroom.
We're going to get outside now.
So that particular building was the old library and became the cultural center, which we have very little use for. We don't use it that much. It's not actually laid out well for the stuff that we do, and to bring the building up to speed was $6.2 million.
Well, on behalf of the seniors, I'm very happy about this project, so
Yeah.
I hope to use it down the road.
Are you a professional pickleball player too?
I never played.
Oh, well, I've heard all about your basketball prowess, so I thought maybe.
Yeah, word gets around.
Okay. Trustee Katsinas.
Just to be clear, there's 10 pickleball courts, correct? I think it was
That
mentioned.
is correct.
10
Yes.
of them, okay.
there are 10.
Now, that's been a long demand in this community for a long time, so we're really, really happy to see it come to fruition, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, to be fair, I don't know that it's been that long because there was nothing even painted for pickleball when I arrived here as mayor. So pickleball is a relatively new sport, but picked up very, very, very quickly. So, and we're trying to address. Any other comments before I go to this other presentation? So this is just kind of to give the background. I want the whole presentation.
Yeah, Jim, it's the one that's titled 4821.
Ray was trying to help me out.
Yeah, I was trying to make it shorter, but
Okay. Flip to the next slide. So I want to give people the history because this was not something that happened. One, it can't happen overnight, and two, it's not happening overnight because for a lot of reasons. This is from the state of the village, but I kind of want to remind people of what, how we've gotten here. So when I arrived in 2017, that slide on the left is what I saw, which is this year we were projected to be through our reserves and $8 million in the hole in our reserves, and we try and keep a 20% reserve. So we made a bunch of changes in 17, 18, 19, early retirement, some other things, and you can see what our reserve levels actually ended up being opposed to what was projected. Now, the other thing that was projected in 2017, I asked finance, when I saw that, I just about had a heart attack. And finance said, well, we've known this since 2012. They were doing nothing to address it. So we had to make some really big course corrections, which we did. So you can see this year, we were actually able to take over $20 million worth of money out of the reserves to apply towards our capital needs. So flip to the next page. So these are the things that we did. We restructured debt. We did a bunch of IT investments to make us more efficient. We outsourced some things. We insourced some other things wherever it made sense. We reduced our staff, reorganized departments. But basically, we also took, during this time, we were able to not only to improve that position, but we also reduced our debt by about 24 million bucks. So flip to the next page. We obviously faced a lot of challenges, some unfunded mandates, a backlog of capital improvements, this being one of them, state and federal funding where we don't get everything we should. Obviously, inflation's an issue, all those things. So flip to the next page. So these are things that you should know that we've had to deal with. So the state, there's a little fund called the LGDF, which is the Local Government Distributive Fund. Back in 1969, when income tax was put in, they agreed to share 10% of that with municipalities on a per capita basis. So we're more affluent than the average community, so we don't get everything back, but we get a fair amount back every year. Well, in 2011, as part of the debt deal that they did and the increase in taxes that they did. So they increased taxes, if you recall, in the Quinn administration. They also cut what they were sharing. So they basically, not only did they tax you more, but they took away from you, from all municipalities, so they took away from you there as well. So your municipalities couldn't serve you as well. And so this represents how much money we lost since that time up till now was $45.7 million. ARPA, which was the funds that were for COVID, the state, the average community in the state got $136 per person. We were the lowest in the state at 86. You can see Chicago got 526. So they pretty much put a number on it. They think the federal government, your congressman, felt that the city of Chicago, those people are worth actually $695, I'm sorry. So almost 9 times more than the residents of Orland Park. So they put a number on it. Oak Park, a little bit smaller community than us, a couple thousand less people. They received almost $53 million, or excuse me, almost $38 million, and we received about 5. So we were shorted about 2.9 million there. So flip to the next page. Additionally, some of the stuff that was inherited, you have the Orland Health and Fitness. Now, we can make an argument that we should have done the Orland Health and Fitness. I can make an argument we shouldn't have done it. What I cannot argue is that it's $13 million between what we've spent already and what we're going to spend. And no one had any idea. They just made the trade without knowing what that money was that needed to be spent. That's wrong. They should have at least had that debate of whether or not we're going to spend that $13 million or not. Now we're already too deep in to change that, but that should have been something that should have been done. Tinley Creek was a project that was kicked down the road. In 2014, MWRD would have fully funded the project, although it does require us to get some easements from homeowners, which requires some difficult conversations because they weren't willing to have those difficult conversations. Now it's $4 million more, and MWRD is not really kicking in much more, so we are eating the difference. So because you weren't willing to have a tough conversation. Triangle, we've lost $31 million on the Triangle to date. The LaGrange landscaping, all the brick and all the stuff you see there, we paid $18 million for that, not the state. So Boley Farm, that acquisition and the stuff we had to do there's another $2.4 million. So there's a lot of money there of some questionable decisions that we spent money on that also cost us. So flip to the next page. Here's the big one to me, $39 million in tax rebates. Anybody remember those $150 checks we used to get right 2 weeks before Election Day? We borrowed, so those red bars are the borrowing, the blue bars are the rebate. We borrowed every year that we gave a rebate, and we paid interest on that. That's $57 million that we lost, but it was very irresponsible. So next page. So we ended up with a lot of capital needs that weren't funded, that could have been funded either by the state or from some better decisions made by us. So flip to the next page. So in 2017, or in 2018, we analyzed all of our roads. You can see here, 40% of our roads were in poor or very poor condition, and less than 20% were in very good condition, okay? With the projections of the budgets that we were spending, we were going to continue to have 40% of our roads in poor condition, with a little bit closer to 30% in good condition. So flip forward. So in 2019, and 3 of the board members here, they took this action. Trustee Milani, Katsinas, and Healy took this action the very first night on the board floor, and the next day they were accused of committing crimes because they doubled our spending on local roads. But what they did in that decision that they made in 2019, 20, and 21, you can see what we ended up with. So on the left is what was projected in 2023. In 2023 was where we actually were. So you can see how many more roads were in very good condition, how much less was in poor condition, and we're going to continue to, we've actually been able to cut back a little bit from that 8 million to 6 million, and you can see what's projected in 2027. So we've made huge strides in the condition of our local roads, which, and most of you in your subdivisions can see. So again, using facts to make these decisions. Flip to the next page. So this just shows you the 14 areas. I think it's up to 18 because we added 4 more areas this year. So we're probably about 6 years ahead now of the 2017 schedule that we had. So we're doing roads that wouldn't have been done until 2029 right now. So we're way ahead and in a much better spot. Flip to the next page. There's a bunch of IDOT projects too, Southwest Highway, 143rd Street, and other things in the region that we've been working on as well. Flip to the next page. Now here's where you get to the kind of the Doogan Park and pickleball thing. So also, if you look back to 2007, between 2007 and 2018, we were basically fixing one park every other year. With over 60 parks, you can do the math on that. It's over 100 years to fix all our parks. Obviously, that's not a very good cycle. Flip to the next. So what we did in 2018 is we did an assessment on all of our parks. And we assessed those based on security, accessibility, because the ADA laws had changed a lot, and the general condition. Everything there you see in orange was poor condition. So over the next 4 years, everything in orange we addressed. So that instead of fixing one park, first off, we doubled what we were putting into our parks, but we also, instead of what they would do is they'd completely renovate one whole park, even though half of it might have been in good shape. Now we're focusing on what's actually broken, as opposed to just because it's the next one in line does not mean it should get completely renovated if it doesn't need to be. Now we're doing an assessment this year, and we actually changed the assessment, so we're not looking at accessibility and security anymore, because really those things were addressed. So now we're looking at general condition and playground condition as part of our assessment, so that we can then, again, we're going to do the same ranking and decide where we're going to spend our money on parks. So we basically just go down this list and try to get to the parks that are in the worst shape. Flip to the next slide. So that approach, you can see, and it's a little hard to see on the right, but that's all the places where parks have been fixed. So, because we get all the time, oh, you just focus on this part of town because they're rich, or you just focus on this part of town and they don't pay as much taxes. And we focus on that assessment and what that assessment says, which parks are in the worst condition. But you can see 2020 to 2023, we put in 23 pavilions. We did 22 major park renovations. We did 23 basketball courts resurfaced. John Humphrey Complex we redid. Tennis and pickleball courts, so we resurfaced the tennis courts and obviously striped them for pickleball, which I know doesn't make pickleball players happy, but, and we've got to figure out a way, someone's got to figure out a way to have an adjustable net that actually brings the net down to the right height, and then we'd probably be okay. There's got to be somebody with that technology. They'd probably make a mint. But still, you've got 17 courts that were resurfaced. Bocce ball courts, we've redone 8, and the Doogan courts are being delayed because we know we're doing these renovations. They were on the list this year, but we delayed them, and there's going to be actually an approval tonight for 2 more. Volleyball courts, 2. Centennial Park West we're redoing currently. Schuessler Park we're currently redoing, and we're adding batting cages, or have added batting cages to John Humphrey and to Centennial Park, and we had none, which I can tell you as a travel baseball coach, is like, are you kidding me? We have no cages. So, so we have all that. So that's what we've done since those 3 members of the board got here, and then the new 3 came on. Those are the things that we have done that before we were doing one every other year. And this is what we've gotten done. So, so it's a process. We can't get to everything at one time. Schuessler Park was clearly identified as in the worst shape, and so we did that. John Humphrey, you had a 7-foot drop-off from home plate to center field on one of our fields. I mean, literally, you've got an 8-year-old out there, a 10-year-old, and you're like, where'd he go? Because it was that bad. The football teams were playing on a field that was designed for baseball and tearing them up. So flip to the next page. So this is what Schuessler Park, it's ongoing. It'll be open next year, should be done in the spring. But you can see we're gonna have 2 turf football fields, long time coming. I know pickleball's been waiting, but these guys have been waiting since 1974 to actually have fields that were designed for football and not shoved onto some place to be. So, so now you'll have a place, and it's turf, which twofold. One is football tears up fields, obviously, and now it doesn't matter because they can play in the rain, whatever, it's not gonna tear up the fields. Provide soccer and lacrosse fields the rest of the year. But the other thing is we can store water under there, and they have a water storage problem. So turf fields allow you to store water underneath it. So the pond's getting dredged, they're moving the sledding hill over to the other side, so there's a lot of great improvements, an ADA accessible area there as well. Flip to the next page, Centennial Park West. This is what's ongoing right now. So, and you can't really see it, but right next to the G in lawn seating, there's a big hill there. That's where the hill is right now. probably not well designed originally because it eats up half the site, so that's going to get moved back behind the walkway. So all those blue tents you see there are Taste of Orland tents with pads and electricity, so we don't have generators like we currently run. We don't have to stake them into our parking lot. They're actually designed for that. You have a permanent stage with restrooms. It'll allow for better concerts, and basically it'll allow us to move our Taste of Orland, our Market on the Park, all of our concerts here in one venue. It's fenced, so we don't have to go rent a security fence every time. We don't have to rent a stage every time. And then obviously the parking, you've got about almost 3,000 spots between the east and west parking lots there. So it's gonna be a great venue, and that also should be done next year for all of our events next year should move over there. So those things were put in motion. Flip to the next page. We've also been working on a regional water project. We don't have redundancy in our water bill, in our water right now. If there was a break in the CalSag, literally people would die because we're talking 4 or 5 days without water, and nobody has that kind of reserves. We have more than most that are on the system. You would build a system with a loop today. Back then they didn't. It's one line, so we need a second line. It's about a $300 million project. It was approved before I got here. It's the right thing to do. It required a lot of agreement. We're going to start our spur 2 shortly, right, Rashid? Which will tie to that spur, because we have to tie to that line, to our water line, in order for us to actually have redundancy. So we have to pay for that portion. That construction costs about $16 million. And done next year? Substantially complete next year. So that's what you see going on Wheeler Drive. That's why Wheeler Drive's road hasn't been redone, is because we knew we were going to tear it up. It was actually ready to be redone about 4 or 5 years ago. So we just kind of resurfaced temporarily to get us through, because we knew we were going to dig it up. Flip to the next page. So all of that stuff had to happen. So go to the next page. So one of the things we also evaluated is we evaluated all of our facilities and their condition. That's where we found out, hey, the cultural center, $6.2 million. We offered it up to the schools because they needed space. They decided to take another option. So it didn't make sense for us to keep it, so we're leveling it, and that gives us the opportunity to expand Doogan Park. Pickleball's been on our radar screen. It was like, where is it going to go? Well, this is a very natural fit. The cultural center is not going to be taken out of service, though, because we had to wait to see what the schools wanted to do, and it's not going to be taken out of service till next year. So next year is when it's going to be leveled. So that's why, just all these other things had to happen to make this happen. So the current 5-year capital improvement program, roads and paths, facilities, parks, and you can see Doogan Park's on there. So there's also a phase 3 for John Humphrey that we're hoping the school districts will agree to, which will add a couple of fields there and a soccer field there as well. And that's because that south part of John Humphrey is actually owned by the parks, or excuse me, by the schools. And so therefore, we have an agreement to maintain it and we get to use them, but it's their field. So we're willing to pay for it as long as they're willing to give us a long-term joint usage or usage agreement, which they haven't been willing to do yet. And then vehicles, our average vehicle when I got here was 14 years old. So anyone who knows anything about fleets, that's a really old fleet. And that includes police vehicles that averages about 4. So, so we've been in the process of upgrading that. So there's just a lot of capital needs that we have. Flip to the next page. These are the major capital projects we have the next 4 years. So I know it's a little hard to see, but you got the water improvements, you got the police training facility going in next year. Our police training facility is basically not safe, so we had to shut it down for any live fire. So we need that because we obviously need a well-trained police department. So, and that allows us to move our emergency operating center into that location. And our emergency operating center currently sits in our recreation department because our recreation took over the old police station. That opens up that whole floor so they can move storage, and we can get rid of some old buildings that we have storage in right now. So all these things kind of happen together. It also allows us to move our maintenance staff for recreation, our management staff into the recreation department, which opens up the building on John Humphrey, which means the Veterans Center gets to move to that, and a building that would have cost us $400,000 over the next 4 years, that gets taken down because it's no longer, it's just out of its useful life. So all of these things were because we evaluated our parks, evaluated our roads, evaluated our buildings, and took a holistic approach and put a 5-year plan, which we never had, for how we're going to do all of our capital. So flip to the next. Just so you can see what the police department's going to look like, that's going to give you an idea. So the range there is in the kind of the orangish color, or the rust color, and then a bunch of training rooms and other things over to the left. Flip to the next. So remember I talked about all the state funding and local funding shortfalls. So the state funding shortfall, $46 million to date. The next 5 years, $28 million more projected. The ARPA shortfall, so all told, you're looking at what, $77 million of shortfall? Our unfunded capital in that plan was $106 million. We can cover $29 million. It's that 77. If the state wouldn't have screwed us, we'd have the money to do this. Flip to the next page. This is even worse. The Orland Park decision, the property tax rebates, the interest, the triangle, and Tinley Creek alone, those are 57, 88, $92 million. We can cover the 14. Those decisions alone, change everything that we had. So we have come up with a way to fund all these projects. That's what we can, that 106 we've covered with our capital plan and with our plan, but it was a challenge. Flip to the next. So we made a decision to increase our home rule sales tax, add a utility tax. We're going to drop property taxes, and we're going to eliminate vehicle stickers. So we kind of did a trade-off there, and that combined with our debt capacity will allow us to do these big projects in a fiscally responsible way and not rely on the state. So I know that, everyone wants to see things done sooner, but the reality is the design is going to take, into next year to have it all engineered. So really, you're looking at the 25 at the earliest to construct in any case, but we do think we're going to be able to fund it. If we get that grant, we're going to be able to fund it in 25. It was originally 26. We've always anticipated that anything we get grants for, we will shuffle our capital program to take advantage of any outside money we get to reduce our costs. So that's kind of the plan behind all of this. So if anyone wants to come talk about pickleball courts, feel free, even if you didn't sign in. Okay. Does the board have anything else to add? All right, we'll call the roll.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Peacock.
Aye.
Fiscal year 2023 Budget Amendment Number 3.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
I move to recommend that the village board approve expenditure increases in the capital projects fund and general fund in a total amount of $1,139,594.48. Expenditure decreases in the capital projects fund, general fund, and recreation fund in the amount of $2,330,634.09 as detailed on the fiscal year 2023 Budget Amendment Number 3.
Second.
Any comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Healy.
I'd just like to make a request that if we could have something that reflects how this is going to affect the 5-year plan that we recently went through.
So with the 5-year plan, it's not a one and done. Every year, we actually tack on our new year, and we continue that process. So this will be reflected in our 24 budget. You will see that as part of the new 5-year.
Okay, so we're going to wait a bit.
In very short order, we will be providing the draft budget to the board.
My understanding of these changes, though, are that everything that was approved this year is being rolled over to next year, so it's not going to impact next year's budget. I mean, it'll be a line item, but it's a rollover, so it's already been approved. And these cuts were actually cuts, either savings or projects that are no longer going to be part of the plan for various reasons.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
So I think, Bill, what your concern is that we've just put a $2 million bogey on next year. My understanding from staff is that we have not done that. We've actually literally taken $2 million out of our 5-year long-term plan, either, like I said, through savings we saw in projects this year, or for some projects that are going to be not done for various reasons, and then those expenditures that you see. So it's a net $1 million, but we're not going to see that added to the budget. I think that's your concern.
That's it, right. All right, thank you.
Is that, do I got that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the rollovers are, they will roll over, but they're not included in the 1.2 million in savings.
Right, because remember the last meeting, we said, hey, we don't want rollovers to be part of these savings because otherwise we're paying for them next year. So, okay. Any other questions or comments? And the only other thing, so that the board is aware, what I've asked for is I've asked for an accounting of the wage increases, because the 200 and some thousand dollars in wage increases don't exactly match the 60-some thousand hours. It should be somewhere close to that. So they're still in the process of reconciling that number. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Reshevsky.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
An ordinance amending Appendices A and B to ordinance number 5774, Third Amendment.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani.
move to recommend that the village board adopt an ordinance amending Appendices A and B to ordinance number 5774, Third Amendment.
Second.
Any comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Rediszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye. Any non-scheduled visitors that do want to speak that haven't signed in? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Rediszewski. Mayor Pico.
Aye. We're adjourned, and then about 10 minutes, we'll start the board meeting, which, relatively speaking, should be a short one.